So many characters that I don't care about a single one of them. Well, almost. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. This is your first and only warning that spoilers of all kinds may lie ahead. Right now, taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on May 7th, 2024, and originally published April 9th, 2024. I think this is probably going to be short and sweet. I say that often, and it's often not the case, but I think it will be this time. Action Comics 1064. I think that there's just so many moving pieces, so many characters from the Superman family that there's not enough focus on any single one of them. That's what I'm feeling about all three of the comic books that I'm talking about this week. There's some interesting things going on, but I'm not sure if they're really going to ultimately help or hurt their relevant properties. Specifically, I'm talking about the Zarnians, which is the race of beings that Lobo is of, and up until this story, we've been told that Lobo is the last remaining member of his race. But these guys are super tough, super difficult to kill. From what I understand, they can regenerate themselves from just a single drop of blood. That's how freaking unkillable these guys are. And if memory serves, I believe they've been known to at least give Superman a bit of a rough time or a challenge, not necessarily threatening him with death, but, you know, he's enough to distract and get in the way of Superman. But now we see that there's like a whole swarm of these things, male, female, all different personalities. They don't seem to be merely clones of Lobo, but they're all part of some kind of plan that Brainiac has been hatching. And by the end of this issue, we see a tease that we are toying with multiple versions of Brainiac, including the Green Arrow-looking goatee and mustache version, and the old robotic version with a brain inside of clear glass on his skull, and all kinds of other versions in between. This, combined with all of the members of the Super Family kind of getting some attention here and there, well, and a lot of it being given to a jogging scene at the beginning with Lois that I'm like, I'm not sure this is really paying off, and mostly she's just trying to have a day to herself, but it's not really a character-driven thing because she's jogging past various members of the Super Family and we're just getting a reintroduction to all of them. I'm definitely not getting on a soapbox and saying this is bad writing, but it's just not the kind of storytelling, the kind of writing that I really care about. I tend to want stories to zoom in on a smaller number of characters, get me inside their heads, what's motivating them, what's troubling them, what are they caring about, and that's how I'm going to be engaged with the story. It also doesn't help that I'm not a big fan of Lobo as a character to begin with. But when you put all that together, it just makes me wonder, we've got all these puzzle pieces flying up in the air. I'm wondering where they're going to land and if there's any hope that it's going to be assembled into a picture that I will find interesting to look at. Green Lantern number 10, in a bit of a similar situation. Of course, there's been big stuff going on in the Green Lantern corner of the universe with the United Planets creating their own, shutting down the regular Green Lantern Corps, creating their own Lantern Corps, and also even shutting down Lantern Corps of across the color spectrum. Meanwhile, Hal, last issue, discovered a secret central power battery hidden on Earth as kind of a backup if things really go south for the Green Lantern Corps, so his ring is powered by that and therefore unaffected by the powers of the United Planets to kind of shut down other Lantern rings and all that kind of stuff. And so the pieces are in place for it to continue to be a Hal-focused story, but in this issue, there's a lot of other lanterns that are being played with as well. New lanterns, old lanterns, and everything in between. Now, I'm hopeful, since this book has had mostly a Hal focus going forward, that we will, after this kind of like wide shot, if you will, in the story, in issue 11, get back to a more Hal-focused story. Not because I'm especially a Hal fan, I just, again, want to have a focus on a smaller number of characters, and we've been invested in Hal up to this point. The issue also doesn't win points with me by having a backup story about Guy Gardner, which that's a character that can be written in different ways, and the more like silly and immature and Justice League International era Guy is written, the less I want to spend any time with him. I feel like after that time, especially when he had his own book, Guy Gardner Warrior, he really was going through some changes and he was maturing. Yes, he still had rough edges, but he was not like a joke of a character. He was a hero that you could kind of take seriously, even with his flaws. And this backup story kind of leans into more the silliness of the character that, if anything, steers toward making him seem less capable, a little bit more inept, and I'm just not interested in that version of Guy Gardner. All that said, I'm still unavoidably on board, A, because I'm a big Green Lantern fan, and B, because I am invested in this United Planet story and what the ultimate status quo change is going to be, or if it will be, a restoration of the Green Lantern Corps when all is said and done. So I'm very curious. I'm invested in the property of Green Lantern. I'm just not finding this part of the story to be really playing to my interests. The one comic of this group that I'll zoom in a little bit on is Suicide Squad Dream Team 2 of 4, which is a countdown to the big crossover event Absolute Power, which we're seeing little teases of and lead-ups to in various books in the DC universe. And this is the story that has Amanda Waller, head of the Black Ops Suicide Squad, or Task Force X, has her really at the center of what's going on in terms of what the big problem is going to be. She is convinced that the government needs to have oversight and really control over metahumans, superheroes, in addition to supervillains. And so that is what she is attempting to do with kind of like this power consolidation, starting with, taking over the Hall of Justice and calling it now like the Hall of Order. Anyway, as it has always been, the Suicide Squad is sort of an instrument to serve her agenda. But again, I think in this book, there's just too many characters that they're kind of playing around with. Also characters that I'm not really interested in before now, including like Bizarro and like the nephew of Amanda Waller, who has his own code name in his shtick. Dreamer, I'm not really interested in. Harley Quinn, I mean, I know she's really popular with lots of people. I don't really find her interesting. So it's a rough lineup and too much of a wide shot of the story right now for me to really be invested, except for my investment in Amanda Waller. Now, it's been hinted at that she became really the hardened person that she is and had like just a bone to pick, or to put it lightly, with superheroes because of becoming a widow early in her marriage, early in life, in her adult life. And so Dreamer is kind of exploring this nightmare scenario, entering into her dreams, where she's having this conversation and one that ends in conflict between her and her deceased husband. Now, I don't know how much of her past and her origin and her motives that stem from this tragedy in her past have really been explored in the comics. This is the first time that Amanda Waller has almost forcibly been on my radar, and I don't begrudge DC doing that, but I am very interested, if they're going to put her at the center, to have scenes like this and to keep following up and developing them so that I can be introduced to Amanda Waller more fully and understand what drives her, because I think there's a lot of complexity to her character and the way she's handled. She's dealing in very morally complex situations, so it's hard to, we're supposed to not like her. We're supposed to say that a lot of times she's doing bad things, but there's often a component of I don't know if I want to say goodness, but like her motives are understandable, and the complexities that she's dealing with are understandable and not easily glossed over, I think. In fact, I think in some ways, following Amanda Waller, getting to know her more, can be just a little light exercise in nuance, in thinking in nuanced ways. I think very often we can kind of have these polarized views of different topics, different worldview issues, where if one person doesn't completely agree with our viewpoint, then we slam them over to the complete polar opposite side and categorize them in with those other people. But Amanda Waller, I think, provides an opportunity for us to put our thinking caps on, see how our moral compasses are tuned, and try to navigate the messy waters that she is navigating and come to our own conclusions about, right and wrong. So I think written in a certain way, Amanda Waller can be a very worthwhile character these days for readers to engage with. But really, there was just one brief scene in all the pages of this issue that was dealing with that. I could have done with so much more. Hopefully, we will get more in issues 3 and 4 of this miniseries, and then hopefully we'll really get to explore Amanda Waller and understand her more in this big Absolute Power crossover that's coming up. For now, my ring selection for this week is the Black Ring, which I think I am reserving for those weeks where I'm just like, nah, I read all the comics, none of them light a fire in me. I'm just kind of left feeling dead, and it's not that I hate them, they just feel kind of lifeless to me, or at least in terms of appealing to the things that I typically enjoy. And I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. I would love to get your thoughts and reactions. What of these comics have you read that you're really reacting to in strong ways? Or maybe there's some other comics I didn't mention that you want to talk about in the comments. I love interacting with you guys in the comments below. And then, of course, I'd love it if you would check out christiangeekcentral.com. There's a ton more content being made there as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.